Closing the Cultural Divide Between Student and Teacher, a digital story by Kate Connors. The embarrassment and humility that comes with finding out you have been colorblind is a painful realization. Colorblindness is a social term referring to disregard for a person's culture, race, or ethnicity. I grew up thinking colorblind was okay, that colorblind was not racist. Instead of learning to value everyone's differences, I was brainwashed to believe that assimilation was the norm and that assimilation is politically correct. I guess you don't know what you don't know until you finally do know. As a 29-year-old white woman in the sales industry, I decided I was ready for change, and I was ready to make a change. I felt numb to my work and knew my lifelong dream of being an art educator was still possible. So 6 years after graduating from college, I embarked on a master's degree in education at Arcadia University. The first class I took about multicultural literacies blew the doors wide open. I began to see what I just did not know for so long. I was colorblind. The professor explained how assimilation takes away from a student's individuality and in turn can enable a student to open up in class and retain valuable information for the future. Once I became aware of my defect, I knew in order to be a successful teacher in this changing world, I had to expand my knowledge on cultural diversity and how to effectively teach with little experience in a culturally diverse arena. The best part about my situation is that I can do so much to change it. I can begin the process of educating myself to be more in tune to cultural differences in the world, and I can begin to open my mind to how to teach in a world with rapidly changing demographics. English language learners are the fastest growing group of students in the United States today. Today, 1 out of every 9 students is learning English as a second language. If this trend continues, current projections indicate that by the year 2030, 40% of all school-aged children in the United States will be speakers of a first language other than English. Demographics are quickly changing, and as teachers, we must be equipped to deal with these changes. Strong parent-teacher relationships relate to positive student outcomes such as healthy social development, high student achievement, and high rates of college enrollment. The question is, how do we build that connection if we have no prior experience with the student's culture? Researchers at Harvard offer 3 key ideas on how to build better relationships with your students and their families. Diversity capital, effort toward connecting with families during the school year, and connecting with preparation specialists to improve your communication skills to caregivers. This issue is important for all teachers because as diversity rises in public schools, the trend of diversity among teachers does not. More than 80% of the bachelor's degrees in education awarded during the 2009 to 2010 school year were to non-Latino white students, according to a new study by the American Association of Colleges for Teacher Education. In the absence of a racially diverse education workforce, we must change how the 80% of white teachers become racially educated. We cannot effectively teach children who are different from us if we do not try to understand them and their culture. How can white educators become more effective at teaching in diverse classrooms? We become students ourselves, enrolling in courses that outline the social justice issues in this country. Before we can truly want to expand our knowledge and understanding of other cultures besides our own, we must first learn how it is affecting our students. We then need to understand our own cultural biases and break down those walls that have been built through our own experiences. As teachers, we must dig deep to understand ourselves before we can ever expect to understand and help our students. Culturally responsive pedagogy starts with the premise that race and class matter, and that some schools fail to send diverse students signals that they belong. To make sure all students feel valued, the theory goes, teachers need to be aware of their own biases, work deeply to understand their individual students, find ways to bring students' heritage and community into the classroom, and hold all students to a high academic standard. Now that we have begun to educate ourselves, we then find ways to incorporate this awareness into our classroom. Teacher Diversity Capital provides a basis for the idea that emotional connection to a student and their family can increase how you impact them in the classroom. Diversity capital can in turn afford teachers the knowledge, skills, and dispositions needed for a sustainable commitment to, validation of, and exchange with culturally diverse students and families. Building family profiles would be important in building a strong connection to my students also, learning everything there is to learn about my students' parents and their family life. We then begin to build communication. We may have no experience in communicating with students' families and also may be too busy to make home visits through the school year. It is important to have a plan in place to expand communication with students and their families. 1. Call each child's family with positive information. 2. Email each student's family during the school year with positive information. And 3. Through email attachment, post office mail, or student delivery, send a positive message via audio or audio-visual medium regarding each student. These are easy ways to stay connected to your students and maximize your diversity capital. The timeline on achieving these goals is never ending. I think growing as an educator will continue to grow and change with our world. As we see changes in our schools, we must also change. We must continually educate ourselves and remain teachable in order to teach. There is increasing evidence that diversity makes us smarter. Researchers have documented that students' exposure to other students who are different from themselves and the novel ideas and challenges that such exposure brings leads to improved cognitive skills, including critical thinking and problem solving. As teachers, we must promote the diversity of our students and learn to understand them as well. Improved critical thinking and problem solving can help them grow as learners and hopefully close the ever-growing achievement gap we see. In a vigorously changing country, we as educators must be prepared to teach diverse groups of students, even if we have no experience with these cultures. With a majority of teachers being white in the United States, we must take action to educate ourselves on how to connect to these changing demographics. By becoming students ourselves and by breaking open our own closeted biases, we can begin to make strides in education. Once we understand ourselves, we can relearn behaviors on how to connect to students and families that are different from ourselves. Putting a plan into action on how to communicate to families to help a student grow in an unfamiliar environment should be the goal. This will take effort on our part as educators, but the reward will far outweigh the risks of breaking out of the safety of our white, privileged bubble and growing as teachers. Being confronted with the idea that I was colorblind all these years was humbling. It forced me to seek a way of living that included everyone, no matter the color of their skin or country they were born. It is painful to grow and learn, but when I enter my first classroom, I can be confident that I will have the tools needed to affect the change I want to see in the world.